Welcome to this edition of Exotic Gardening UK, Yacht Chris Weekly. In this episode we're going to look at one type of plant, and that is the Fatsias. We're going to look at the differences between Fatsia and the varieties, Fatsia Japonica, Fatsia Polycarp, and also the cross between Fatsia and ivy. So we're going to look at all the different types, different colours, the different ways they grow, and also their similarities, because all these plants grow fantastically in a UK garden. They like a decent soil, but they can tolerate lots of different conditions. You can have dry soil, you can have really heavy soil. As long as it's not waterlogged in winter, they'll do really well. They can do in sun, but they look much healthier and better in shade and partial shade as well. So these are great plants because they're evergreen, so they look good all the year round. So right, let's get on to the video, let's look at the different types, and then join me next week for more gardening. And here we have the species Fatsia Japonica from Japan and the Far East. And it grows to about 3 meters tall, large shrubby bush. Can be multi-stemmed. It will be multi-stemmed after many years. It'll start off with like a single stem, but then it'll grow lots of extra stems. Very easy to look after. You can cut it back really hard. This specimen, half of it was cut down to the ground, and it's grown about a metre or so of new growth in a season. And then I sort of cut down the older stems every so often just to keep it looking fresh. And again, it's flowering at this time of year, and the flowers, like all Fatsias, are ivy-like because they're in the same family. So there's some small black berries clustered together. And this is Fatsia spider's web, a very slow growing Fatsia with speckled whitey cream and green leaves, and it's quite variable, so they do come out pretty white, the leaves, and then settle down with some green in them as well, and they can look quite splotchy, and you can see the different shades of green and cream and white you've got in this type of Fatsia. And like I said, it's slow growing, so it really needs somewhere where it will get swamped by other plants. It needs to be planted sensibly, and this only gets to about a metre tall, metre wide at best. This one here, this specimen, has been planted out about 5-6 years now, and it's only about 60-70 centimetres tall and wide. It is overtaken a little bit by the bamboo behind it, but it does need some shade. If you get it in too much sun, then the leaves do go a little bit crispy in the hottest sunny days. So you want a bit of shade or full shade. If it's in full shade, you're going to get less white, and if you're in full sun, you're going to get more crispy white. So you want really partial shade to get enough white creamy leaves as well as a green for growth as well. So that is Fatsia spider's web. You either love it or hate it because it does look a bit sickly to some people's eyes. So this is Fatsia Japonica Mussoorie, and it's basically the same as Fatsia Japonica, but should grow bigger, deeper, glossier leaves with more lobes on them. It's to be honest, very hard to tell apart from the regular growing Fatsia Japonica. But it is a named variety, so it can be grown and shown to be slightly different, although in my circumstances I've yet to see it looking, to be honest, any different from the regular Fatsia, which again could be quite variable in its leaf form. So this one, it's got deeply lobed leaves, deep glossy green colour, although in this specimen some of the leaves at this time of year have got a bit of yellow, bit of nutrient deficiency on some of the leaves you can see. And this is a steady grower, can be multi-stemmed, and my specimen is about 1.5 meters tall. And here we have Fatsia Japonica variegata. Again, it's got just a bit of variegation on the edge of the leaves, white and creams, but the rest of it is dark green leaves. It's in pretty much full shade at this part of the garden. If it was in a bit more sun, I'd have a bit more variegation on it. And it's got nice big leaves that are about 25-30 centimetres across, and my specimen's got one stem, but if I cut it back it would be multi-stemmed like the other Fatsias. And like all Fatsias, very easy to grow as long as it's in ground that's not absolutely waterlogged in winter, it'll happily grow in partial shade, full shade, and sometimes in a bit of sun, although it will look a bit unhealthy if it's grown in sun. So that is Fatsia Japonica variegata. This is my favourite looking Fatsia Japonica form. This is Fatsia Japonica Annalise, and it has wonderful variegation of deep and light green and cream as well, like camouflage coloration on the leaves. It's a steady grower, still pretty slow, but much bigger than Fatsia Spider's Web. Again, it wants the same sort of conditions, so partial sun or to a decent amount of shade as well. And like all Fatsias, deeply lobed leaves, but this wonderful coloration. And like all Fatsias, flowers in autumn and early winter. Now growing at around 3 meters tall is my favourite non-Japonica Fatsia, and that is Fatsia Polycarp. And there's a couple of different forms of it. This is the Fatsia Polycarp wide-leaved form, and this has much deeper cut leaves, like bigger lobes in the leaves compared to Japonica. It grows very quickly, very quickly. It can be multi-stemmed, you can chop it back, or you can let it grow with just 1 or 2 stems, and it flowers again in autumn. And you can just see to the top of the frame in the middle some dark rusty flower buds emerging. So it grows and flowers in autumn, and like I said, it's a very vigorous grower. Again, it needs shade to do it its best, with some shelter, although it does grow tall, so it's hard to give it shelter when it's fully grown. So that's Polycarpa, Fatsia Polycarp. So this is Fatsia Polycarp Edward Needham form. Very deeply lobed leaves, very long fingers basically, nice deep green leaves. It's relatively quick growing, but not as quick growing as a wide-leaf form in my experience. And again, flowers in autumn. This has got a bit of sun on it, and it still kept its deep green leaves, but it has got lots of protection surrounding it as well in my garden. I've got this one that's in more of an open aspect, and I've got one in deeper shade, and I'll show you that one now. So this is a Polycarpa in deep shade, and it's about to flower once more because we're in autumn. And it looks very similar to the one that's in sort of partial sun, partial shade. So that's Fatsia Polycarp Edward Needham form. So what do you get if you cross the ivy with the Fatsia? You get a Fatsia Hydra, so an intergeneric cross, and it has a Fatsia-like leaves, so quite large leaves, but the ivy sort of growth pattern, so it just sort of climb up. Doesn't have the attachments that ivy does, but it just sprawls through plants and shrubs and tries to grow up to the light and against other structures as well. So this is a plain green form, but there are variegated forms as well, which are well worth looking out for. Very hardy, and one of the most interesting sort of exotic evergreen climbers you can have for the garden. Needs shade really to do at its best, or partial shade, just like the other Fatsias. Full sun, it will grow, but you might get a bit of crispy leaves in summer and a bit of paler green as well. So that is Fatsia Hydra. Thanks for watching this special edition of Yorkshire Chris Weekly, looking at Fatsias. If you like this video and you want to see what else I get up to in the garden, please subscribe below and join me next time in the garden.